Good morning, everybody. Just before we get started, we'd like to just make sure the sound quality is working. Would you just give us an indication that you can hear us clearly? Great, great. Thank you so much. We'll start in just a moment.
I can take people, I'd be happy to.
All right, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started with that. Let me turn on my mic here. And do I need to test it first, or we think we're good for everybody's mics? And we're streaming. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our quarterly meeting of the Learning Technologies Advisory Committee. Appreciate everyone joining us this morning. I want to make sure we had some audio issues last time. We have new mic solution here. We tested that you can hear at least one of us. Want to make sure that I'm coming through loud and clear, or do I need to adjust something at this point before we kind of get into business? Okay, I saw a couple thumbs up, so fantastic, great. That's really good news. Yes. Oh, we are on standby because we are not streaming live yet. So before we conduct our official business, we need to be streaming live.
Is streaming live.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are now good. So I'm going to start with, again, welcoming you, and we're going to do roll in just a second, but just a reminder of our open meetings protocol for these meetings. All our virtual meetings, all members must remain on camera at all times so we can maintain a quorum. You need to be seen clearly, so make sure that your lighting is good so we can see facial expressions. And members should only be off camera during breaks or during our subcommittee work. Any questions about that? Let me know, but I've been through this before, so you know the play. And at this point, I am going to ask Dr. Lofters to take our roll. Dr. Lofters.
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and call your name, and please respond to let me know that you are present. Luke Dowden.
He let us know he was not going to make it.
Janet Camps.
I'm present.
Thank you, Janet. Tim Snyder.
Present.
Thank you. Glennis Gaines.
Here.
Thank you, Glennis. Sarah Lee.
Here.
Thank you, Sarah. Lydia Tenna.
I believe Lydia let us know she was not going to make it also.
Mary Gentry.
I'm here.
Good morning, Mary.
Good morning.
Alicia Lloyd.
Here.
Good morning. Nikki
Morning.
White.
Present.
Robert Green.
I'm present.
Thank you, Robert. Ruth Chisholm.
I'm here. I'm here.
Thank you, Ruth. Jeff Frills.
Here. Hi, Andrew.
Good morning, Jeff. Yun Wan.
I'm here.
Good morning. Julie DeLello. Daryl James.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Daryl. Megan Weatherly.
Present.
Good morning. Pam Morgan. Jacqueline Mock.
Present.
Good morning. Aaron McGough.
Present.
Good morning, Aaron. Alexandra Heron.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Bella Rodriguez.
Here.
Good morning, Bella.
Morning.
We have quorum and we are. Did I fail to ask, call anyone's name? If so, please let me know. And well, good morning. I'm glad to see everybody here, and I'll hand it back over to Patrick.
Thank you very much. So our next order of business is to consider possible action to approve summary notes from our March 31st, 2023 meeting. So if you have had a chance to review those, if not, take a moment and then I will entertain a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve.
All right.
And I'll second. Robert will second.
I'm sorry, could I ask who had the motion to approve?
It was me, Andrew Megan.
Thank you.
You got the second also.
And the second was,
And who was our second?
Robert.
Robert. Thank you, Robert.
thank you.
All right. Any discussion? Any amendments? All right. We'll call for a vote now to approve. All in favor, please raise your hand physically and keep it up until we have counted everybody.
Unanimous.
All right, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now proceed with our coordinating board updates. And our first, we're going in the order here? Do we have everybody queued up to? Well, if we don't have, is John Wyatt with us yet? If not, we'll go ahead with our second item because I do see that Jessica Acton is with us. So let's go ahead and shuffle to go with the second item, and we'll come back to John when he is available to join us. So Jessica, if you would please provide us the update on state authorization reciprocity agreements in CSARA. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all well and staying cool. I'm here this morning to give an update on Sarah since my wonderful colleague, Cam Merritt, who has taken on Sarah duties, is unavailable. Cam prepared an update that I will share, and then we will see if you all have any questions. Sound good? Okay, fantastic. So the first update is on the new policy modification process. Cam says they received much input from stakeholders and interested parties. The regional steering committees will vote in September on each proposed policy modification. If all regional steering committees approve a modification, it will go to the NC-SARA board in October for final approval. She also provided an update on the 2022 data reporting that just wrapped up on June 15th. As of June 13th, out of 141 Texas SARA institutions, only 119 have reported their distance education enrollments, and 113 have reported out-of-state learning placements. So Cam is hopeful that by the time we were in this meeting that all institutions will have made timely reports. And unfortunately, I can't give you an update on that because I no longer have access to that dashboard. So if you want an update on that, you'll need to shoot Cam an email. Institutions are continuing to submit renewal applications and payments on time. There are 3 potential new institution applications that are expected in the next several weeks. She has also has received a couple of possible SARA-related student complaints, and she asks that if you get an information request from her, please assist in providing that information or resolving the complaint. And just a reminder, if you have any SARA contact changes at your institution, please send those directly to Cam and she will get that updated for you. And don't forget that the NC-SARA website has a lot of good training, which I'm sure you all, those of you who are the SARA contacts institutions are well aware of. So that concludes the SARA update. Are there any questions?
Jessica, I have a question, and you may not be able to answer this since you're filling in today, and this is an impromptu question, but there is some proposed rulemaking, I believe, that could affect SARA related to the the external internships. Any news or guidance on what direction the wind's blowing with that?
You know, I honestly am not up to date on that. I would suggest checking on NC-SARA's website. They have an ongoing update on that. But I can definitely also have Cam send an email out with an update.
That would be wonderful. And I'll turn to my colleagues here. Some of you may be more engaged with that as well and read things or heard things recently. So I will offer that opportunity if anybody has anything to share with the committee on that. All right, hearing none, we will move forward and wait for that update. And thank you very much, Jessica, for joining us once again. Always nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
And I'm going to look at our host and see if we have John with us yet. And if not, we will go ahead and proceed down our agenda. And next is Dr. Kyla Torrey, who will provide us the Department of Education request for information item.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. Okay. So a few things first related to what we talked about at our last LTAC meeting, which was the USDOE guidance or dear colleague letter on third-party servicers. And then I'll give just some other sort of broad updates related to DOE activity, just in case you're interested. So for the third-party servicers, the dear colleague letter that was posted in February that we had talked about at the March meeting and that the coordinating board submitted a comment about at that point. The DOE received over 1,000 comments on that letter and decided basically to pull back. So the effective date on all of that is no longer September 1st of 2023. They have clarified that there are a few instances that there was a lot of concern about that are not subject to TPS requirements, and that would have included study abroad, the clinical and externship opportunities that are closely monitored by an institution, course sharing arrangements, and dual and concurrent enrollment programs would not be subject to the TPS requirements. Their intent is to remove the provision related to foreign ownership of the TPS, and they did kick off some negotiated rulemaking in April, which includes third-party servicers. The docket also includes accreditation, state authorization, and distance education definitions, among other things, but those are the things most closely related to this committee. So they had some open hearings in April that were very lively. You can watch them online if you like, and so we'll stay tuned and see where that goes and continue to give updates on that. Just another note on negotiated rulemaking and the DOE. This is not directly related to distance education, but somewhat related perhaps. They are involved in negotiated rulemaking on gainful employment. So the committee met between January 18th and March 18th of 2022. They posted proposed rules. That comment period ended June 20th of this year. These proposed rules would require non-degree programs at all institutions and degree programs at for-profit, and all degree programs at for-profit institutions to show that graduates can afford yearly debt payments, and that the typical graduate earns at least as much as an adult who did not attend post-secondary education. They're encouraging the eligible post-secondary programs to produce acceptable debt and earnings outcomes, to let students, both current and prospective, know about what those outcomes are, and to provide better information about program price. This includes requiring additional elements for financial aid communications, providing more adequate career services. There are requirements for institutions that are at risk of closure in terms of letting the DOE know, and then they are planning to establish a DOE website to provide key information for student decision-making as regards debt and employment. And just on a note related to that, the coordinating board is also working on providing that sort of information about programming, about Texas programs to the students and anyone interested. So that is something that is upcoming, and we may have an update on that process later at a later LTAC meeting. But just that is what's going on with the gainful employment proposed rules at this point. Okay, any questions on TPS or gainful employment rulemaking?
The question about gainful employment, what level of program does that extend down to? Is it everything from associates to doctorates, or does it include undergraduate or graduate academic certificates, or even micro credentials?
So my understanding, I'm not a full expert on this. My understanding is that it's non-degree programs at all institutions. So it's sort of career-focused non-degree programs, and then degree programs at for-profit institutions.
Gotcha. So publics would not have to do anything for their degree programs for gainful employment.
Not with these rules that are currently proposed, right? These are specific to sort of career career and technical based programs. They have a term for it, which is escaping me, but I will look it up and send that to you. And I can send the link to where the proposed rules are as well, and sort of a summary of that.
And I know this is forthcoming and may still be under development, but is it likely that whatever the coordinating board settles on will align with what the federal regs come out to be around gainful employment, or may it vary in some instances?
That's a good question. I don't know enough about that conversation at this point to be able to give you a good answer, but I think probably what we can do is have someone from our data division come into maybe the next quarter's LTAC meeting and talk more about what we're planning on in terms of public data. We have the data modernization initiative has sort of several layers of data that are going to be available to institutions, and some of it is public and will be available to students as well, and some will be more secure based on only available to particular people at the institutions. Yeah.
So is there an opportunity? You said that the gainful employment negotiated rulemaking comment had closed already. What about for TPS? Is that still open for comment, or where is that in their process?
I believe that they're in the pre-rulemaking stage, so they had the they had the hearings in April. I believe the next step is to post some proposed rules, but again, I can give some information related to timelines and things for that. The TPS and the accreditation, the DE rule or the DE definitions and all of that is on the docket for the next, like the 23-24 year. So there's not necessarily a set dates on any of that, but it's coming within the next year.
And am I correct that before we were in negotiated rulemaking, they had the hearings and there was public comment at that stage, but there will be public comment again once they have proposed rules?
That's correct.
Very good. Our institution did provide comment on both of those last round, and I watched some of the hearings, and as you said, they were at times entertaining. Yeah. And it was a couple hours well spent. You had the CEOs of many of the large third-party providers third-party service providers that were speaking, as well as students who had been through online programs that loved them or felt like they did not get their money's worth. So very, very interesting testimony. All right.
This is how we in the education world entertain ourselves.
Apparently. Apparently. Well, thank you for those updates. Anything else on this item before we, actually, I see that John Wyatt has joined us, and so we will loop back in if there are no other questions for Dr. Corey at this point. Daryl?
Yeah, so forgive me if I missed it, but so they've kicked the can down the road a couple times on the gainful employment. Did they indicate when they're going to revisit this again? Sorry if I missed that.
So I was trying to figure this out so that I could give you all a date. The best date that I have so far is that it wouldn't go into effect until 6 months after they post the new guidance. When that new guidance would be coming is unclear to me at this point. So yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. And John, we are ready for your legislative update. Thank you so much for being with us.
Of course. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. John Wyatt. I'm a Senior Director of External Relations at the Coordinating Board. So I'm going to present just an overview of some of the things that the legislature did during their regular session. And of course, I'm always happy to answer any questions or if anybody has any additional insight they might want to offer. Always happy to hear that. So the legislature concluded their regular session at the end of May. It was a very productive session for higher education, both in terms of the investments that the legislature made in higher education, as well as just the sheer volume of bills that were passed impacting higher education. I've been in this role or something akin to it for 14 years, and I've never seen more come out of the legislature in terms of bills impacting higher education. So the legislature, they adopted a lot of bills. There were some big ticket bills on DEI offices in higher education. But there were also a lot of other bills that were kind of more targeted in terms of creating or altering programs to support institutions and students. And to be honest, we're still assessing everything that came out of the legislature during the session and what it's going to mean for both our agency and what we need to be doing, as well as higher education in general. So I'll provide some of the major bullets as I see them. So HB1 was the General Appropriations Act. That's the state budget for the coming fiscal biennium. That bill included almost $10 billion in formula funding across our institutions of higher education. So those formulas that are kind of the major state investment in our institutions. That's a $1.1 billion increase over the current biennium. It includes $4.8 billion for general academics, Lamar State Colleges, and TSDCs, $2.9 billion for health-related institutions, and $2.2 billion to community colleges. In addition to that, the legislature made a major investment in financial aid in the coming biennium. They approved $1.5 billion to the major state financial aid programs at the coordinating board, Texas Grant, TEOG, and TEG. So that amount is essentially the amount that was necessary to keep pace with growth in these programs, so that we as an agency will continue to be able to serve the same percentage of eligible students as we do in the current biennium. The legislature also chose to invest in some new grant programs that the agency was able to create using GEAR funds, those being the Texas Transfer Grants and the Texas Leadership Scholars Program. So legislature really did make a significant investment in assisting students in being able to afford higher education. Another major focus in higher ed this session was how higher ed supports the healthcare workforce. And so there were some significant investments in some programs that support graduate medical education. There was $230 million to support GME residency slots, $280 million for the Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium, and then another $125 million just across the board for the other programs at the coordinating board or that we are involved with that support healthcare professionals. This included a new nursing scholarship program that was authorized under SB 25 during the session. The agency got $25 million to support those programs. There were also a number of policy provisions that were enacted through legislation this session. I'm sure you're familiar with HB 8. This was the bill to implement the recommendations of the Texas Commission on Community College Finance. That commission met during the interim to look at how we fund our community colleges and make recommendations for how we can improve that. So HB 8, among many things it does, it moves community colleges over from a methodology of funding largely based on enrollment to one based on student outcomes and the earning of credentials of value by their students. That's a pretty major overhaul in how we finance community colleges. It also creates a new financial aid program for dual credit students. So that is not something that we have had in Texas before. And now we will have a scholarship program to assist those high school students who are pursuing dual credit courses. So our focus is implementing HB 8. So there's going to be a lot of rulemaking. There's going to be a lot of work that goes into making sure that bill is implemented efficiently and effectively for our community colleges. Another area where the legislature was very active was in research. So the legislature passed House Joint Resolution 3 and House Bill 1595, which together established the Texas University Fund. So as a fund to expand our investment in research at public universities. There were also bills that created the Texas Space Consortium and the Texas Semiconductor Innovation Consortium to focus on those particular aspects of our state economy and how we can support growth in those areas. There were a couple of other bills that might be, I thought, of particular interest to this group. HB 4005 establishes the Texas Competency-Based Education Grant Program. This is a bill that it's actually going back a couple sessions. It's been worked on, and it got across the finish line this time. But it creates a financial aid program that would be specifically for students enrolled in competency-based baccalaureate programs at public and private institutions in Texas. Our responsibility at the coordinating board is we are going to administer the program, and we're charged in the bill to adopt rules for that program in consultation with institutional financial aid officers, utilizing the negotiated rulemaking process. And the bill also specifies that students who demonstrate the greatest unmet financial need are to be given priority in that program. So again, as with most bills, a lot of details still to be worked out through the rules making process, which is going to be a lot of work on our end in the coming months. And another bill I'd mention is HB 2177. This legislation created a pilot program for providing financial assistance to students for the cost of accessing digital course materials. So this bill requires the coordinating board to adopt rules for the administration of the program. So we will be required to develop a methodology for selecting the eligible institutions and for allocating funds among those institutions, as well as establishing criteria to evaluate digital course materials that may be accessed under grants from the program. So again, those details to be determined through rulemaking. The other the one caveat to put on the legislative session is it ain't over yet. So the legislature concluded their regular session. However, we are currently in the middle of a special session, and it is anticipated that there will likely be multiple special sessions during the coming interim. There's no particular reason to think that higher education is going to be a focus of any of those special sessions. The items that we do know the legislature is going to address are property taxes, border issues. We know that the governor is likely to call one on public school vouchers. But you never know. And so we'll be keeping an eye on what the charges are as the governor calls additional sessions of the legislature together. And finally, again, this is just kind of some very brief items that I wanted to highlight. We will be putting together, as we do after every session, our summary of higher education legislation. So every enacted bill that impacts the coordinating board or higher education, we have a document that we post on our website that provides some summary information on those, as well as some information on, cost and rulemaking, et cetera. So we do expect to have that up in July. So that's again kind of a very, very quick run through of a very busy legislative session. But I would be happy to at least attempt to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Hi, John. I had one question about SB 17, the DEI bill. Do y'all have a timeline for the coordinating board to produce guidance that would be helpful for institutions along those lines?
I don't have any information myself. I know one thing that we're working on right now is, we got so much put on us in terms of what we have to do, and we have to do it very quickly. So I know we're sorting out kind of how we prioritize enactment of these different bills. So long-winded way to say I don't, but I will certainly talk to our folks and see when we anticipate getting something out.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Mock?
John, any insights as to study sessions? So separate from special sessions? Any study sessions of note that were charged coming out of bills?
I'm not sure I understand study sessions. I'm not familiar with that term.
So a study session, for example, did the one on accreditation, institutional accreditation, was that charged, right? So you form a committee to actually investigate. That's what I mean by study sessions.
Gotcha. I mean, we have numerous, studies, and as a result of bills that we're going to have to do. Again, I don't have an overarching timeline on those, and each one has different dates in terms of when things are due to the legislature. When we have to convene groups. So I don't have anything particular to share, but I think it is going to vary based on what the specific requirements are of each study.
Thank you.
And Jacqueline, to my awareness, the major bill dealing with accreditation that would have created an accreditation commission, that didn't pass. So I don't think that one's in the picture.
I think that's right.
I think it was SB 2335 or something like that, and it never made it through the House. So
My question was whether it made it to a study session level, because that was unknown to me, right? So I know the bill itself did not go through, Jeff, but I had heard that there might have been an assignment to a committee or a study session. Anyway.
Oh, and there will be during the interim. They have they're called interim committee meetings, right? So they look at issues during the interim to decide, what are the things that we want to consider during this 2 years we have to potentially address in the next session. We do not know what those interim charges are going to be. They usually come out later in the interim, but it's entirely possible this may be something they want to look at.
All right, thank you.
Any other question?
I have one, John. Nobody else does at this point. You mentioned in House Bill 8 that it was implementing recommendations from a community college funding commission. And one of the provisions deals with providing financial aid for dual credit students. Will that financial aid apply only to students taking dual credit at community colleges, or will it extend to four-year institutions as well?
An excellent question. One I don't immediately have the answer to. Let me check. I do know this was a big focus of the commission's work, was providing those resources for dual credit students, but I'll have to verify which institutions are eligible. I think the program itself is called the FAST program. And again, there's also the issue of, we're still gonna have to develop rules for this thing. And of course, that will be done through an open rulemaking process.
Excellent. You always do a great job of answering our questions. And
well, I feel like my knowledge is like a mile wide and an inch deep. So I can tell you what the legislature did, but the details can be a little tough to keep in the old melon here.
No worries. We appreciate you taking us along for that mile. And any other questions before we let John go?
John, I did have one more, and it was regards to, and HB1, the budget bill is so impenetrable. I thought I read something about this, but I just want to clarify. Funds for institutions to freeze tuition. What was the final status of that in HB1? Do we get our colleges and universities going to be able to get those additional funds? Do you remember what the amount was? I just want to clarify what the
there was conversation, and I know institutions, our chancellors and presidents proposed before the session that at a certain amount of funding, they would pledge to freeze tuition for the biennium. I don't believe that the amount provided by the legislature was at what they had said was the what they needed. But I know that there's nothing in the Appropriations Act specific to a tuition freeze. So legally, there's nothing binding on institutions in regards to tuition in the Appropriations Act.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did somebody else have their hand up? All right. Very good. Any other questions from the committee? All right. Well, John, I anticipate we may have you back at our next quarterly meeting to see what has happened over the summer with special session or sessions, and count on your wisdom to help us understand that landscape.
Hopefully, I will have very little to share.
Truth. There's enough work on the coordinating board plate from what you've provided already to keep everybody busy for, well, until the next biennium and legislative session. So again, thank you very much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yep. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Glynis has her hand up.
Glynis, you have your hand up.
Just a
Oh,
clap.
she's clapping.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Wow.
Appreciate the info.
Yeah, y'all take care.
Yeah, thank you too. Thank you again. All right, so we had gone back to our first item under coordinating board updates, and now we'll go to where we left off at our fourth item and digital learning updates from the Division of Digital Learning and Dr. Kylie Torrey.
All right, I'm back. So I'm just going to give 3 quick sort of updates on some programs that we're kicking off or have kicked off relatively recently. The first one is that we had our second OER Advanced Skills Academy launch this week with 65 registrants that included faculty, librarians, and instructional designers from across the state. This is sort of the follow-up to our OER Core Elements Academy. So the OER Core Elements Academy is foundational. The Advanced Skills Academy really dives into curation, evaluation, and authoring of open educational resources. We do that in partnership with the Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management and Education, or ISKME, and that will go on throughout this month. And then the participants are developing an OER project that they had in process previously and sort of getting into that during the session, and they will post that on OER Texas to be available for all. Later this summer, we'll be launching our first OER Playbook Academy. So in March during OE Week, we launched into the world the OER in Texas statewide playbook, which is a text that is meant to guide new and expanding OER work at the institutional level. And it includes many examples from across the state of OER work being done at institutions. We did that in collaboration with an advisory committee of people across the state. So the Playbook Academy is going to be aimed at institutions who are in the beginning stages of their OER work, as they were sort of identified in some research that we did recently. And so we'll invite those institutions first, and then dependent on how many slots we have available, we'll open up to any other institutions who are interested. And the idea is that teams would come together to go through the playbook, think about the work that's happening on their campuses, connect with other institutions and other people at sort of mentor institutions as well, and build awareness of OER and drive systems change across campuses when it comes to OER advocacy. So that academy will kick off on July 20th and go for a few weeks, and then with continued work after that. Next, we on June 15th had our very first informational webinar for the Micro-Credentials Learning Network. So the Micro-Credentials Learning Network is it's meant to be a peer-led learning network to leverage institutional expertise in micro-credentialing to develop digital resources, including some strategic implementation plans, and guide campuses as they develop micro-credentials that are industry aligned. So the application period for that is currently open, should close end of day today, actually. And it is open to any institution who sent a representative to that informational webinar. They will propose micro-credential projects and send teams to an engagement over the summer where they will be led in the development of their strategic plans for those micro-credentials by institutional experts that we are contracting, and then they will launch that credential in either fall 2023 or spring 2024. So it's obviously that's a quick timeline. It's meant for projects that where either there was institutionally developed curriculum already in progress, or where they're using some a prepackaged curriculum like Grow with Google or something along those lines. We'll also, as part of that initiative, be creating openly licensed materials, which include an on-demand micro-credentials fundamentals course that will be put on OER Texas, and that will be available, of course, across the state. And then the strategic plans that are created as part of that initiative by the institutions who participate will also be posted openly licensed on OER Texas so that other institutions can use and adapt those ideas as they go forward. And we'll be creating a hub on OER Texas for the project so that everything is sort of organized and easily discoverable there. The last sort of piece of that project between now and the fall is that the Digital Learning Division is going to be hosting a micro-credentials summit in September of 2023. And that will highlight the work of the Micro-Credentials Learning Network, but also just include experts in micro-credentialing from across the state and nation, and have that conversation with a wider audience. So that's open to everyone. There'll be a save the date sent out and more information about the summit probably in July. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, we'll send that information to the committee as well, so you know, but and then registration will likely open in August. And then the last kickoff that we've had recently to share with you is that we launched our statewide course sharing pilot in the spring. So the idea is to increase access to online courses for students who are enrolled at Texas institutions. This was a recommendation of the Texas Commission on Community College Finance. So we have 10 institutional partners, community colleges, who are part of the pilot, and they are providing insight into the development of a the statewide course sharing process and protocols. They're looking at potential barriers to implementation, and they're helping provide strategic solutions to address those barriers. And the goals of this pilot program are to implement a course sharing platform, to have this sort of partnership of institutions who are involved, co-create guidelines to provide a robust foundation for success for a statewide program, And then to provide centralized support to those institutions who are participating now as they go through technology implementation and change management at their institutions. And then the operations of course sharing, really trying to build sort of a foundation for a statewide program on the pilot to scale at this point. The first courses for the participating institutions will be launched in fall of 2023. The documentation that comes out of that, the sort of guidebooks about potential barriers and the decisions made by the advisory committee and the subcommittees that are a part of this, will also be shared widely so that that information is available as we move forward. And that's what I have in terms of digital learning updates. Do we have any questions on any of that?
Hey, Kyla, I have a question.
Hey.
On the statewide course sharing pilot, is there a name for that initiative that you shared, or if we wanted to find more information, is that online somewhere?
There's no information online at this point. It really is a pilot. Like we only have 10 participating institutions to sort of be a guide for this and to do the initial step. There will be, as we move forward, of course, more information shared more widely. Usually we have a snappy acronym for things, but we haven't called this anything except for the statewide course sharing pilot yet. So we'll have to think on that and we'll let you know.
Okay, I appreciate that. And you said it begins in fall 23. So these 10 institutions that are participating in the pilot, they'll begin course sharing in the fall of 23 with each other.
Correct. So part of their sort of charge during the summer and thing is to set up their instance of the platform for course sharing. So they will be involved in this initial kickoff as the advisory committee and also as I shouldn't use the word guinea pigs, but that's the start as trying it out on the course sharing platform and providing some lessons learned and some just experience as they go through that process. So that is that's the pilot in terms of fall 2023, and then there will be a RFO at some point for sort of the larger scale project.
Thank you so much.
Can you share some examples of courses that the pilot are looking at to share to start it out? What types of courses?
I can't. I'm looking at Carrie because she's leading this program. So
Current institutions are encouraged to look at ACGM and WECM courses. They haven't identified specific, but
Do you have a mic?
So I don't know if you all could hear Carrie. The mic is in the ceiling and also in front of us. There's lots of mics going on. But so the institutions are being encouraged to look at ACGM and WECM courses to start out.
100% online.
100% online only at this point.
Related to that, you mentioned the establishment of a course sharing platform. What is that? Is that a learning management system that they agree to use in common? Is it some other type of technology platform to enable that sharing?
It's a technology platform that's sort of specific to course sharing that can automate the registration process across institutions and financial aid, like tuition, all of that. So the idea is to sort of automate all of that process. And part of the pilot is to work with the institutions to get those instances set up. We have contracted with Oatly/Parchment at this point for the pilot. And so we're working with them, and the institutions are working with them to get those instances of the platform set up that would then, where students would be able to register, but then the actual, like when students would take the course, it would be through Blackboard, Canvas, whatever the instance is sort of at their institution, but the registration process and things go through Oatly. Right?
So there's a difference between course sharing and the actual content sharing or learning on the student side. So this
Right.
course sharing
More like a
Course sharing is more the
cross-registration.
administrative process,
Cross-registration,
yeah,
right, okay.
cross-registration process, right? So the idea is that the student from the home institution who's taking the course would not be any different, would not have a different experience from any of the other students in the teaching institution course, right? It's just the sort of registration process that goes through the platform and all of that administrative thing.
I ask these questions because being from Prairie A&M University, we're in the Texas A&M system and they have a Relish campus, and we've gone through the heartaches of working that out, and it can be very interesting. So I look forward to seeing what we try to do in the A&M system, what you're about to do across the state of Texas. Let's see, maybe you won't run into the hiccups we ran into.
We're trying to learn from hiccups and also best practices, right? We're trying, started this project. I mean, we kicked off with the institutions in the spring, of course, but the project started quite a while back with research and talking to stakeholders and thinking through what that experience has been, not only in Texas, but really at the nationwide level, and trying to get some best practices and lessons learned before we get the ball rolling.
Daryl, Dr. James?
So could, is there a website or something we can get more information? Because there's so many questions I think that I think I'd like to understand.
Yeah, I have no doubt there are going to be a lot of questions, and really this is the very first time that we're talking about this with you all. Maybe not. We may have brought it up briefly at a meeting a couple quarters ago, but this is sort of the ta-da, we started moment. There will be much more information moving forward, and really between now and the fall, and really probably into the spring, it will only be the institutions who are participating in the pilot, as we develop materials and think about what those lessons learned are, and try to set a good foundation so that when we roll it out to more institutions in the state, as we hope, then there will be materials to work with, documentation, experiences from the institutions who have already participated, and lots more publicity, I promise.
But the idea, for instance, is the institution from which a student came that's transcripted at that respective institution, the course, and again, course teaching load, credit, financial credit. I mean, there's so many questions that.
Absolutely, yeah. And so part of the charge of the advisory committee and subcommittees of the pilot are to work through a lot of those questions and make recommendations based off of their experience, based off the operations as they happen at their institutions, also based off of what we know about what has happened in other consortiums and things across Texas and across the nation. So we're trying to pull it all together into a nice package of documentation that will be available when we roll out further.
Okay, all right, thanks. I think there's SACSLC implications, faculty credentialing. I mean, just a lot of things. So if there's a website or something we could look at, that'd be appreciative.
Good question, and then I see Dr. Mock has her hand raised. Is this exclusive to community colleges, or would four-year institutions be participating in some expansion of this project?
Currently, the institutions participating in the pilot are community colleges. We do have plans for four-year institutions being involved in the future. It's all a long-term plan, but this is really just the pilot. Maybe that's why we haven't given a snappy acronym, so that we are clear that this is what's happening now and the next, at least into the fall, spring semester is the pilot, so that we can establish some foundational information for this.
Thank you. And are there any community college representatives on LTAC that are participating in the course sharing?
Nikki,
Nikki at San Jacinto?
Yes, we're
Alicia?
participating.
Robert? Okay, so 3, very good. Very good, thank you. And Dr. Mock, wanted to get back to you, you had your hand raised.
Thank you. So Kyla, clearly a lot of interest from LTAC. You referenced in your most recent comments that there were charges made to the focus group and the subcommittees. If those documents are shareable just for informational purposes with LTAC to understand what the charge of this pilot group is, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
I'm sure we have some foundational sort of basic information on the charge of the subcommittees and what subcommittees have been put together and all of that stuff, so we can send out a little packet to the committee.
And I'll say one more thing, understanding that the community colleges are in the pilot. When we looked into this, the one thing we found out pretty quickly was that the community colleges have been doing this for years. We had the 4 years are just, dabbling our toes in the water and of something that they've been doing for years. So I'm excited that people on LTAC are already a part of this, and looking forward to see what you guys come out with so that we can kind of join the.
You referenced that there's a long history of community colleges doing this type of course sharing, and that makes me wonder, the Virtual College of Texas, how does it differ from that organization who had longstanding success at sharing courses amongst institutions? Is it built on that? Is it kind of a different framework completely?
So Virtual College of Texas, which is now Digitex, Digital Higher Education Consortium of Texas, has been doing this for a very long time. And so we're definitely learning from those experiences and trying, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we through research and reaching out to as many stakeholders as possible, including Digitex, including consortiums who have been doing this, well, including the A&M system, including the California Community College, that like all of the sort of big systems that are doing this at this point. We're trying to learn as much from the experiences that people have already had as we can, and then see how that translates to a statewide model in Texas, where of course there are specifics that will be different from other places.
Of course. And with VCT and Digitex, beyond the course sharing, they also did or do collective purchasing of learning technology platforms that then the participants share that cost and get some advantaged pricing and perhaps support. Is it possible that this course sharing initiative will expand into that area as well?
So another piece of the Community College Finance Commission recommendations had to do with looking at shared services at the statewide level. Actually, just yesterday, we released a memo to announce that Tuesday of next week on the 27th, we'll be sending out a survey to all of the institutions about digital infrastructure on campuses. And the research subcommittee of LTAC has been heavily involved in looking at that survey, as it is really a sort of an extension of the survey that you all have done for the past 6 years or so, maybe more. And so that survey will take a look at the different IT systems used in administrative and business services, IT infrastructure, and then teaching, learning, and collaboration services in sort of a broad way, so that we can get a more comprehensive overview of what that digital infrastructure looks like at the institutions, with the idea that the findings of that survey will help us to look at service provision, resource development, and things at the state level. We know that we would like to create a digital space where we can set up communities of practice around these things and that sort of thing. So that is planned and will be informed by the survey. And then the survey findings will sort of inform the outlook moving forward in terms of shared services statewide.
Very good. Thank you for bringing that angle into the conversation as well. And you mentioned the micro-credentials network, and sounds like if you aren't already involved or didn't attend a pre-application meeting, that even though the deadline doesn't pass until the end of the day. So I was off mic.
Can you get involved? The answer is if a representative from your institution attended the informational webinar, then your institution is eligible. But you would have had to have the representative there.
Gotcha. So if that didn't happen, then you're not in that pool of people who could propose. And I don't know how extensive the application is, even so.
Right, yeah, well, I mean, it would be tight to get it in before the end of the day, especially since you're in the LTAC meeting, but I will say that again, this micro-credentials learning network is sort of just the beginning of us thinking through providing services and supports around building micro-credentials, and like the on-demand openly licensed course that will come out of this will be available in OER Texas to all for use and also for adaptation to your institutional context, that sort of thing. And then we'll look at lessons learned from this network over the summer and think through what that looks like moving forward too.
Very good. And I'll ask the committee, just as I did for the course sharing, are any of you participating in, or your institutions participating in the micro-credentials network?
We're hoping to. There's still time to get an application for the end of the day, but.
So nobody within this group. I know Luke from Alamo College, Luke Dowden, has been very involved with their build out of a micro-credential ecosystem. So he may be participating. I hope he would be.
He may be heavily involved.
He may be, yeah. So, and just curious, though you're not involved in the micro-credential network at this point, how many of you have institutions that are actively exploring, developing, or offering micro-credentials at this point, just by show of hands?
Yeah, so part of the refresh of the statewide strategic plan is the credentials of value piece, right? And we've talked about that in here too, and thinking through micro-credentialing and how that plays into the idea of a credential of value. So the conversation is starting now and will continue for a long time, I'm sure.
I've had the opportunity to have a dinner with Dr. Justin Louder, who was formerly chair of this committee, and one of the subjects we touched on was micro-credentials, and we both agreed that it seems like it's the Wild West right now in the world of micro-credentials and what they mean, and how if they are indeed of value and how you communicate that value well. So this is important work that's being done, and excited to see what comes out of this. I don't think I'm going to be texting anybody at UNT to try to jump on board with this. We did just hire someone to who is a department chair to take on this as a strategic initiative to explore and develop micro-credentials. We just launched our first one this week on data visualization. It's not a plug. I'm taking it myself and making my way through, but I think we're going to see a whole lot more of these, not a whole lot less, and trying to figure out what they mean in the scheme of or schema of students earning degrees from our institutions and finding pathways that connect them with careers, whether it is a degree or not. That's really important work for all of us to be engaged in. So we're very thrilled that coordinating board is putting resources, and this was one of the big three issues you brought forward from the Division of Digital Learning. So thank you very much for the updates on all of those, OER, Skills Academy, and the work there as well. So, but before we move on, any other questions? And looking at the time, might be time for a brief restroom break, but want to make sure we have any other questions for Kyla, we can address those.
I will just say that, of course, like, data collection is part of everything that we do. And so, as we think through, you know, as we roll out things like the micro-credentials learning network, as we roll out the pilot for course sharing, we are, of course, gathering the experiences of the institutions that are involved in that in a sort of qualitative way, but we're also collecting data to try to get some metrics to inform this as we move forward with things. So lots and lots of information being gathered to try to do this well for everyone.
Thank you for the work and thank you for the update. And if we have a slide ready and if there are no objections, it's 10:07 now. Maybe it's an odd number. Actually, it's an even number, but take an 8-minute break, come back at 10:15. Give us a few minutes to stretch our legs and get anything that we might need, refresh ourselves, and then we will reconvene. Thank you. All right. We're waiting for everybody to show back up, or do we have a limited view right now?
Yeah, they're probably all coming back.
They're coming back.
All right. Okay. So we have it where they're suppressed if they're not showing there.
Mhm.
Very good. Give everyone a moment to turn their cameras back on. Anybody who doesn't have their camera on is suppressed from the shared view. So we are just waiting for everybody to show back up on screen. And Dr. Gelsinger, you are going to be on deck next. So just wanted to get you ready and acknowledge that we can see you. We're excited to have you.
Can you all hear?
Try again. It was very kind of, it broke briefly.
Can you hear me okay?
That's
Yes. Yep.
I got a new webcam, so I just want to make sure everything's working well.
Yeah, looking good, sounding good. Absolutely. All right. We need to ollie oxen free, or what gets everybody to come back? But we will start again once we can confirm quorum.
We have 11 so far.
What is our quorum? 12? 13.
13.
13.
Technical.
Did you?
But really,
Did you include
technically.
Did you count us?
Yes, I got you.
All right.
12, it's 12, right, because we had 23.
Yes, and I know Dr. Mock said that she had to go at 10:30, so she may join us back here for 15 minutes, or maybe not.
12, we have quorum.
Yeah, because 13.
Yeah, that's really-
All right, Mary's our superstar. She gave us a quorum. Welcome back, Mary. All right. And just in terms of our schedule, I understand that lunch is being delivered here between 11 and 11:30. So maybe next 30 minutes, we can cover the next two items, which are on recent additions and changes to the Texas Administrative Code. And we're going to start off with the item related to Texas Administrative Code changes for program approval. And presenting on that is Dr. Emma Gelsinger. She is a senior director in AHA, no, not the 80s pop group, but the Academic and Health Affairs. And we appreciate your being with us here today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. This is my first time presenting to you all, probably not the last, so I'm glad to be here. I'm just going to do sort of a high-level overview of the changes that are in effect and happening for academic program approval. Academic and Health Affairs just went through sort of a long rule revision process. I think it was about 18 months long. And so now we're working through the implementation of those rules. Just sort of like a broad understanding of the reason for these rule revisions. The rules had not been updated in quite some time. And so one of the goals is to better align the academic program approval rules with the refreshed strategic plan, with accreditation guidelines and existing statute. Also working towards consolidating all of the program approval rules into one TAC chapter. Right now, they're sort of sprinkled in different places. And so working to get one place for institutions to look for program approval rules. And also part of this process is really streamlining our internal business processes and approvals to get things through the coordinating board faster. I know sometimes there can be some lag time in submission to approval. I just want to clarify that what I'm going to talk about, it applies to the academic program approvals. It does not include the workforce programs, so the applied associates and the workforce certificates. Those will be a separate rule revision with a, I'm sure, a similar lengthy process. This does apply to the academic associate degrees, but not the applied and workforce. We also have not done rule revisions on the off-campus rules, which we're starting under the assistance of Dr. Lofters, or the self-supporting rules. So I just want to make sure folks are clear on which programs that these apply to. Currently in effect, this was as of June 1st, there is a expansion of the planning notification requirement to cover all of the academic degrees. The doctoral and professional planning notifications need to be submitted 1 year in advance. With the other types of degree levels, there's not a formal timeline for the length of time you would need to wait to submit the full proposal. I will say we have streamlined this into a short online form. Previously, institutions were writing letters and getting CAO signatures and things like that, but this is a very quick online form for the institutions to fill out to provide the planning notification. The bulk of the changes will be happening September 1st. We've reduced the number of programs that need to go to the quarterly board meeting, limiting it primarily to doctoral, professional, and level changes up. So like a first bachelor's degree at a community college, things like that. Currently, we have, anything that's engineering, anything that's over $2 million, that has to go to the quarterly board meetings. And so that will not be the case as of September 1st. Again, so it'll help streamline the approval of those types of degrees. Aside from doctoral and professional, for the remaining degrees, we've aligned with the SACS-COC new content guidelines. So 50% or more new content will be a little bit of like a lengthier proposal that requires commissioner approval. And then less than 50% new content would be a much shorter form and would be under assistant commissioner approval. There's also changes to the area notification process that institutions will do or won't do. So currently institutions send out the 50-mile notification and have a 30-day comment period before they submit the program to the coordinating board. So we're essentially like plopping that on the other side of submission. So institutions would submit to us. We will send out the area notification, have a 30-day comment period. If there's major issues that come up, we would work with the institutions to help solve those and would consider those comments as part of our review process. Another significant change is right now for academic certificates, we're approving them individually and there's a certain credit hour threshold they have to meet. And so what the plan is certificates would essentially be notification only. We'd like to do a bulk collection of all academic certificates offered at the universities, regardless of semester credit hour. And then institutions can update that as needed. Once we have all of those certificates on file, institutions would be able to report graduates or awards for those certificates. So those are like the big changes generally in the academic program approval. I know you're very familiar with the distance ed changes. I won't go too much into that, but we are working with the Division of Digital Learning to align and fold in the implementation of the distance ed rules with what we're already doing. And so, for example, for the modality change that's notification only, we're preparing a form, again, a short online form folded in with the rest of our other new forms for institutions to fill out. So again, that's very high level. There's lots of details. I do have a website that I will have Dr. Lofters send out to you all with more information. We had a lunch and learn on May 16th, and we'll have a few more over the course of the summer. Those registration links will be on the website once we've identified the dates. So lots more to come. We'll be doing documentation. We'll be updating all of our web content and things like that. So more to come, but I'm happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
What questions do we have from the committee?
Are you anticipating the notification for the certificates to be in a CBM report? Or are you anticipating some mechanism that's going to be some other mechanism? To
So
notify, and then is there going to be an hour, number of hours that are required for that given certificate, even though it's not same, or it's just going to be the title of the certificate?
I'd have to go back and look at what the rules indicate we're required to collect. There wouldn't be a semester credit hour like threshold or limit. So the institution could just say, like, these are all the certificates that we're offering within our academic programs, regardless of the credit hour. I don't know if that's an actual data point that we would collect. I feel like probably it would be. In terms of the collection method, we are still working that out. We're kind of in the middle of this flux of updating a lot of our applications and programs, or not program, like internal processing programs. And so I can't say for sure that it won't be a CBM collection. We need to work with the data team to figure out what the best mechanism is for this. To either align it with an existing data collection or make sure it doesn't overburden, an IR office at a time when they're already providing a lot of data. So I will hopefully have more information on that by the end of the summer. There is no official deadline by which we have to do an initial collection, but I'm hoping it will be either by the end of the year or early on in 2024. Because the goal is to make sure that we have those on file for whatever the next CBM award reporting cycle would be. So institutions would be able to report those awards and they would be on file with us.
Do you imagine that this information on certificates, when collected, will be in an inventory database of some type? Like, we have one for programs now, so it might go there. Then separately, we have the one for distance education programs. If they are distance education certificates, maybe they could go there too, or maybe it's a third instance of non-degree inventory.
Yeah, because we already collect academic certificates, we do have a certificates table where all of this is recorded. And so it would just be a matter of figuring out a way to display that for folks. And I think it would feed into some of the other applications around credentials, like My Texas Future and things like that. I think is one of the big goals, is to get all the information out there about what certificates are available. Because right now we have sort of a limited view of which certificates are available at the academic institutions.
There's one thing I'd like to comment. So one of the things, rolling back to gainful employment, because one thing that we do, for instance, undergraduates, we don't have non-degree seeking certificates. They have to be degree seeking. That kind of ties into the old gainful employment. So you're going to see lots and lots of internal certificates that are much less than the required hours. And it would misrepresent to the public what that actually the certificates were, unless you're a TTU undergraduate student enrolled in a degree seeking program. So so it's not, so I think to Patrick's point, non-degree seeking, maybe we be very careful and to distinguish what those two are, the non-degree seeking student versus a degree seeking student.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll definitely bring this back to the team. It may be a distinction we have in the data collection of whether this is available for degree seeking or non-degree seeking. So thank you for that.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, Dr. Gelsinger, thank you very much for all of your work in this area, getting us to this point, getting the changes made, and also for providing this update and answering our questions. ordinarily we would say, hey, you're welcome to go on with your day, but you may be interested in sticking around for the next piece that Dr. Torrey will present on the Texas Administrative Code changes related to distance education. But either way, we very much appreciate your sharing with us and being with us here this morning.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And now we'll move to, well, before we move to the next item, actually, I wanted to loop back to something that I had asked a question about earlier, and we got an answer on, and it was about the financial aid for transfers, for dual credit students, and whether or not that was applicable to four-year public institutions as well as community colleges. I had colleagues on staff here that researched that and confirmed that yes, it is available to those populations as well. So that is good to know. And now we will go forward with the next agenda item, Dr. Gordy, on the distance education code changes.
Sorry, just add to what you just said though, Patrick, there's a rulemaking process involved, so it is not immediate, I guess. So we're still trying to untangle all the various rulemaking processes that need to happen.
So there's an intended audience, but it's not an actualized audience.
Well, no, it's in statute as that, but just that this is not necessarily going to be enacted immediately. We'd have to go through rules and things before that, I believe, so. Yes, as John said, there were a lot of bills and we're in the process of trying to untangle the knot and figure out what all the next steps are and prioritize. Okay, so let's talk about the distance education rules. I'm not gonna give an overview again because I think we've talked a lot about them, and obviously you all were heavily involved in getting those written and done. But I will say that they were approved by the board at the April 27th meeting. And then the adopted copy was posted to the Texas Register on May 12th. So congratulations. Those rules are now, well, some of them are in effect and some of them will be going into effect December 1st. And that includes the definitions and the new process for institutional plans for distance education. So we truly appreciate the work of this committee on those rules, and we've gotten lots of interest and questions about how those are now going into effect. So all this to say, your work is not done. Now I will set up what the next steps are for that. So there are a few things that sort of need to go into place before the rules go into effect in December 1st. One of those is that the institutional plans for distance education are based on the principles of good practice. So we have a subcommittee right now being led by Janet Camps and Robert Green. Thank you very much. That is doing great work to work on revisions on the PGP. They're going to talk through what they've done so far when we go into the work groups with the quality assurance work group that they are a subcommittee of, and there is a process in place for the revision of the PGP to eventually go to the full LTAC before it would go to the board, probably at the October meeting for final approval. There's some pieces there. The next thing, of course, is that based on the PGP, there needs to be an application for the institutional plan for distance education. There is a current one because this is not a new process, but the renewal, the regular renewal of the IPD is a new process. But while there's a current sort of application of the IPD, the new rules are specific about what the coordinating board staff needs to review for that IPD and what the LTAC needs to review for that IPD. And so that form is likely to need to be heavily revised, if not just redone based on the new rules and based on the updated PGP. So the operations work group, when we go into work groups, is going to talk through sort of what does that process look like for not only for the form itself, but what does the process look like or as LTAC is part of the review of IPDEs. So when those come in to the coordinating board, we give them to LTAC. What is that going to look like at the committee level before LTAC passes their recommendation on to back to staff? So yeah, that's just laying out a bunch of work for you all. You're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. No, we really appreciate all of the great work that you do, and we could not possibly have all of this put in place and really be as effective as it is, I think, without all of you. So we have, of course, until the rules go into effect December 1st. I will say that we also, in conjunction with AHA and Emma, and also potentially some specific DE rule communication webinars throughout the summer, we'll be giving more information to the institutions about what that looks like, and may ask some of you to get involved in that too. But we'll think through, or we'll talk through what the schedule sort of for that looks like as we go forward. We'll be sending out more information about dates and things like that. Okay, I don't know if you have any other questions about the DE rules specifically. I'm happy to try to answer those. Really, all I did was just lay out a bunch of work for you all, so sorry about that, but I'm happy to answer questions about the rules themselves too.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
What you all do, I also have to be involved in, so we're together in this.
Nice try.
Sorry.
No, it's great. It's important work. You mentioned that PGP deadline is basically to get it to the board by October. That'll be here in no time. And revising the IPDE form will be based on that new approved PGP. So there'll be some lag between that October meeting and then getting the IPDE revisions in place.
So we'll talk this through in more detail sort of in the operations work group, but I think probably we don't have to, we can, the PGP subcommittee and whoever we decide is working, whatever subcommittee or subgroup of some sort is working on the IPDE form itself, can probably be in contact prior to that the final approved PGP, so that we can get started on that work and then wrap it up after the PGP is approved by the board finally in October.
So PGP will need board approval. IPDE will not.
The IPD is a form, it's a
Transaction.
process form, so that's not something that the board needs to approve, but according to the rules, the board does need to approve the PGP.
Very good. So it's hoped that IPDE would be available by December 1st when this goes into effect, if not before.
If not before, yeah. Emma and I are in conversation, and soon we'll be in many more conversations, I'm sure, about what sort of the technical side of this looks like, and we'll bring that, we or I will bring that also to the operations subcommittee and to LTAC to think through submission of the form and workflows and all of that stuff. So we'll have all these conversations in parallel, but also informing each other so that we can get all the pieces into place, hopefully well before the December 1st effective date.
Thank you. And in transition, I know we kind of offline worked with one of the public institute for your institutions who received their SACS reaffirmation of accreditation at the beginning of this year. And so they were interested in would there be some type of transitional plan that would give them additional time to meet the requirements for the IPDE, since it's not technically available to them until much later in the cycle?
So the effective date of the rules is December 1st. So meaning beginning December 1st, the vast majority of it. So most of the, like, I've gotten lots and lots of questions. Most of the emails that I'm writing back are saying your IPDE was approved in 2002. You know, like they're quite historic, but there is most institutions, unless your institution has never before offered distance education, you should have an IPDE in place. Then starting December 1st, after that date, once your reaccreditation or accreditation renewal comes up, a year after that is when your renewal IPDE would be due. So it's not backdating like the accreditation renewal that you got prior to that December 1st date. It would be the next accreditation cycle that comes up after the December 1st date. Does that make sense? We might need a flow chart when we do informational webinars on this.
The institution in question, since theirs was before the December 1st deadline, they have a 10-year pass to use the
They are
2002 version or whatever.
they are already approved. And they will renew when their accreditation is renewed next time.
So they're good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, assuming they were already approved. I don't-
So just to be
check on
clear, you're talking about the decennial reaffirmation. So there's a 5-year and a 10-year. So is it the next reaffirmation or is it the next decennial reaffirmation?
It's the decennial. Yes, it's an every 10-year process. There are sort of different lines like SACS reaccreditation, non-SACS reaccreditation, you know, but like there are different sort of possibilities written into the rule, but the idea is basically the 10-year, every 10 years, there would be a renewal.
And that's because we now have the flexibility to seek accreditation from other institutional accreditors besides SACS COC, though I don't believe anyone is, and it's
Right.
a multi-year process, and
you're
you'd be under
proving.
both of them for a transition period. So it was really just an effort to go, okay, if it's SACS COC, it's 10 years. But if an institution should choose to change accreditors now, if they have that flexibility, then it'll be whatever that cycle is, whether it's 8 years or 10 years, it would match that. So it's really set by the institutional accrediting body, but for us, it's all 10 years until somebody goes out on the limb and goes, we want to change, which I can't imagine anybody's eager to do. It's a lot of work to maintain one accreditation while changing to seek another one at the institutional level.
I believe the rules themselves say, I think the wording is no more than 10 years. But there is also a process for sort of extenuating circumstances. There's a process for extension of up to 2 years, I believe, after that. And also it's not that you get your accreditation renewed and then you immediately have to hand in that IPD. There's a year, you have a year buffer. So it's due a year later.
And given that some of the items on the IPDE will draw from the SACS COC affirmation, is it possible for an institution to elect to do it out of cycle? Like, we realize ours is from 2002, this stuff doesn't apply. We'd like to go ahead and proactively complete an IPD and have more, I don't know anybody volunteer for that, but is that a possibility or no? Because who wants to do that? Yeah, or is it not possible because you wouldn't have the SACS COC components for filling in on the IPD at that point?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't think we would argue against you giving us information about the good work that you were doing in distance education at your institution. The part of what the operations work group is going to start thinking through in their breakout meeting today is what that process looks like. So the rules, when an institution submits a renewal IPD to the coordinating board, staff at the coordinating board are going to look over it for completion, as we do anything that comes in basically. And then for whether or not it's met SAC standards related to distance education is what it is. Paraphrasing what it is in the rule. So that piece is at the coordinating board staff level. So the work group, operations work group is going to think through, what this application looks like. What sort of evidence needs to be provided for that? Is it the report from SACs, et cetera? And then the IPD is forwarded to the LTAC committee, and we'll decide on what that process looks like. But LTAC reviews the IPD for sort of the other elements of the PGP that are not directly addressed by SACs. And part of what the PGP subcommittee is working on right now is updating the mapping there. So, which elements of the PGP come from SACs, which elements of the PGP come from the CRAC guidelines, the OLC scorecard, et cetera. And so we'll have to think through sort of what the evidence is that the institutions would present to show that they've met elements of the PGP that are not directly addressed by SAC standards. That's a paraphrase of a lot of detail that we'll have to get into, but that's the general idea.
And in transition, well, we have our QA subcommittee. We still have a doctoral proposed distance education proposal subcommittee. There were no proposals this time. The rule goes into effect to December. We'll have another quarterly meeting between now and then. It's possible there could be more DE doctoral proposals that come in the meantime, or no?
The rules as are in effect as of May, I believe the 18th was the effective date past the posting in the Texas Register, suspend LTAC looking at doctoral proposals. So we didn't throw any confetti or anything, but you all looked at your last doctoral proposal, and we will move on to looking at IPDEs post December 1st. So for the meantime, in the fall meeting, there will be no review of doctoral proposals, not yet any review of IPDEs. So we'll likely be focused again on the sort of work group efforts towards getting all of that in place before the December 1st date.
Very good. A lot of details.
Lots of details to think about. Again, I feel like we probably need some flowcharts. I have some that I'll share, but also we may need others that make sense to somebody besides me.
Procedurally, do we need to do anything to end the doctoral proposal subcommittee as a standing committee, or have we transitioned to the QA subcommittee and that's all we need to do?
That's Andrew, I'm gonna defer to you on that one. Is there anything we need to do to the subcommittee?
With the doctoral?
Yeah, since it's no longer going to convene.
Right, since the May 18th ceasing of the LTAC looking at doctoral proposals, there's not going to be anything.
It's defunct.
Yeah, going forward, yes.
Very good.
But we will talk through what the process looks like for reviewing IPDEs, which may or may not include a subcommittee, and that will be up to the committee at large. So yeah.
So it's possible
You may
it could
get a
be
chance to review, you may get a chance to review the IPDs first if you like.
So it could be a new subcommittee, or it could be continuing work of the QA subcommittee after they've completed the PGP and then move on to.
We have options.
All right, very good. And how do we decide what that looks like? Is that something that we should expect a recommendation coming out of QA or operations subcommittee on, or is it discussion for the full committee?
So operations is gonna start talking about that process today. When we come back and to do work group reports, they can talk through what they decided in their, or what they talked about in their work group with the whole LTAC committee, and we can start to have a little bit of a discussion at the full committee level, but that will be, operations is sort of has the charge of thinking through what those processes look like, what the forms, proposed forms potentially look like, and then that will roll up to the full LTAC, and we'll have that discussion as well. So, and obviously operations is not going to be able to move on some of that stuff without quality assurance because of the PGP changes. And so we'll all be working together in harmony on all of this stuff. Perfect harmony.
All right, maybe I'm the only one that had questions, and I'm sorry for deluging with all these. Anybody else have questions about what was really an item about Texas Administrative Code changes related to distance education, and we got kind of into the particulars of our work going forward. It was just me, Steve. Sorry about that. But,
Never be sorry for
again,
questions.
thank you for all the details and helping clarify how we are moving forward. So at this point, it's not time for our lunch to arrive yet here, but it is time for us to go into our work group and subcommittee sessions. And Mary Ann, do you already have all of those assignments, or do we need to review, make sure who is going where? I know we've got Janet and Robert here leading QA, Charlene and Kyla are going to work with operations in Luke's absence, and Jeff is, who's your co-chair? I should know this.
Is there one? I don't know.
Okay, it's just you, man.
I think so.
So for research. And do you have the committee assignments for each of our groups along with those?
No, I do not have those. I have the room. So.
And we do have guests online for the to join the research work group as well, Patrick. Make sure they have.
Yeah, I saw Liz and Holly both were on. We may have others.
Sarah as well is here.
So individuals can choose which, okay, talk us through that? How does?
Okay.
Don't do it yet, but how do you choose which room to go into?
This is, what's gonna happen is that Mary Ann, who's off camera, who's our wonderful tech support and keeps us all going swimmingly. She's going to open the 3 rooms, which are the research group, the quality assurance group, and the operations group. So operation, Dr. Luke Dowden is generally the chair of operations. He's not able to be present today, so Charlene and Andrew and I will be in that group, and then anyone else who has been a part of that group. Quality assurance, Janet Camps and Robert Green are in that group, and that's the one where we'll be talking about the PGP. And then research stuff is the lone lead of that group for now, and some other Carrie Getz from the coordinating board will be in there, and talk through some more about the shared services survey that is upcoming. So you should just be able to click on the group that you should be a part of, and we'll do that when we open the rooms, which
They are open.
oh well, how long are we?
Yeah, we have to decide before we leave this main room, how long we're gonna be gone and when we are coming back, and we know that lunch may come in the meantime. So how would we like to proceed? So it is almost 10:55. What up?
I was saying, just say 11. I was saying, round up to 11, let's say for an hour.
Yeah, let's come back at noon.
So 11 to noon for subcommittee work, and then we reconvene.
And that would also take into account if they want that lunch as well.
Okay.
During that time period, have a hour and 15, up to you.
Okay, so what we proposed is that we start as soon as we get into our breakout rooms and go from 11 to noon for for our subcommittee work and then reconvene as a full group at noon to have report outs from the subcommittees. And that you may grab lunch during this 11 to noon session, or we might actually allow a little bit of time at the end for people to grab lunch if they haven't by that point, because I know we don't know when it's arriving here, for example. So 11 to noon for our individual subcommittee work, and then we will come back together at noon for continuing with the agenda and those report outs and any actions based on those report outs. So with that in mind, does everybody know which breakout room they are going to? Anybody need an assignment, not have one, or interested in changing?
I think I need an assignment. I'm not sure where I'm going.
Political operations. Anybody at this point who doesn't have an assignment, because there's no one in operations.
Yeah, Charlene has asked that you go to operations because there's minimal numbers of people participating on that one right now. So if you would go to operations, much appreciated. All right, anybody else? Okay, go ahead and go to your rooms. No, sorry, that's not. If you're in trouble or something, no, please join your breakout rooms and we will see you back together at noon. Thank you.
Okay, so how will we
Welcome back, everyone, from our subcommittee meetings. I know that we tried to squeeze eating lunch in there at some point as well, but in any case, well, we've got people coming back in the room, so wait till we have quorum until we proceed officially. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all.
We have call.
We're going to go ahead and get started now that we officially have a quorum. We may have members that are still coming back in the breakout rooms. There's Bella. And did want to give everybody the option, since we have been meeting for the last hour, to take a 10-minute break before we do our report out from subcommittee. Or if everybody agrees that we should just proceed on through, we won't take the break and we'll start committee report outs now. So what is the pleasure of the committee? Is my mic on? Is anybody? Jeff is talking, but we're not hearing him. I think it's because he's
Sorry, am I on now? Sorry, I was double muted. So I think let's just plow through. There's not a lot of agenda items left, and I think if we just push on through, we might be able to finish and get out of here early.
I see a thumbs up from Ruth and from Janet. Anybody that really needs a break? No. What was it?
No, I just knew that's what they would say.
Yeah. We were predicting that might be the case, but thank you for deciding. And so we will proceed with our subcommittee report outs. Not playing favorites because I'm on that subcommittee, but because we do have guests that are from Huron consulting with us on the survey research that's underway, and they are sticking around to be with us. We're going to let Jeff begin with the research subcommittee's report out.
Thanks, Patrick. So in our subgroup, we talked exclusively about the digital infrastructure technology survey. I think that's the word for it. That's going to be going out next week from the coordinating board. Your institutional liaisons to the coordinating board should have received an email notification yesterday from David Troutman to that effect. So we were just going over final versions of the surveys. We've been working, our committee has been working diligently with the folks from Huron to get this put together and ready to go. You know, it's a big, complicated survey. It's not going to be perfect. There's some challenges associated with administering it and filling it out. But we would encourage all of you to be to talk to the folks at your institution to make sure we get a good response rate on this. I think it's about as good as it can be under the constraints that we have and the challenges of the kinds of data that we're trying to get. It's been broken up into 3 separate sub-surveys that deal with IT administration and business, IT infrastructure and services, and teaching and learning. And so one conversation you'll want to have at your institution is who are the best people to answer the different sub-surveys. There's also some supporting materials that are going to go out with it, including an Excel sheet that's customized to fill in the responses to the survey so that it can be just filled in one time, hopefully. That's been designed for that. There's also going to be instructions through various PDFs that describe the survey. So I think there's a lot of things in place that are going to help institutions fill out the survey accurately as much as possible. But we do also understand that the limitations, again, of what we're trying to do and the questions we're trying to answer may not end up with perfect data, but I think we'll get pretty good data about this. And so the point is to help the digital learning division and the coordinating board more generally understand where the state and its institutions are at as far as IT and where there might be some opportunities for collaboration, cost sharing, things of that nature. Just to give you all a sense of the timeline of what LTAC can expect to see, as I said, The survey is being administered from July 27th. I believe that's next Tuesday until Friday, or excuse me, June 27th. I believe that's next Tuesday through July 14th. So it's I guess it's about a 2.5 week window to answer the survey. What we're expecting in terms of results, the Huron team is going to continue to work with our research committee and coordinating board generally on analyzing the results through August, and they expect to have a final report sometime hopefully about mid-September, that and hopefully before our fall LTAC meeting as well. So that would be an opportunity to discuss those results in the full committee by the time we meet, usually in October, if I'm not mistaken. So I would expect we'll be able to see those results by then. I think that kind of does it. Does that, is there anything anybody on the research committee or the folks from Huron would like to add or extend on any of that?
No, I think that was great.
Sweet.
Jeff,
Any questions?
Jeff, at the beginning, I think you mentioned that it was going out to the coordinating board liaisons at each institution, but I wasn't sure that was the case. I thought it was going out to academic officers and CIOs.
Correct. That is correct, Patrick.
So that you may, and we had a little bit of in our committee, because my institution's coordinating board liaison received the survey, but Daryl James, who's the coordinating board liaison for Texas Tech, didn't receive his. So y'all may need to do a little digging around, but look for that. It's an email from David Troutman that went out yesterday afternoon. And they are going to look into that to assure that it got out to everybody it needs to get out to.
It was intended to go specifically to the chief academic officers and the CIOs.
Okay.
Yeah, I can just clarify. So the memo yesterday that went out via Gov Delivery went to chief academic officers and chief instructional officers of public institutions only. The survey itself will also be a memo through Gov Delivery to chief academic officers, chief instructional officers, and we just now received feedback that it should also go to the liaison. So I think we probably will also CC the liaison so that it gets everywhere that it needs to be.
Yeah, an important clarification there. CIOs, in the context we were just talking about, is chief instructional officers at two-year colleges. It is not chief information officers at four-year institutions. So when you're looking around for the survey, it went to your chief academic officer, and regardless of what you call them, a CIO, chief information officer, or provost or chief academic officer, that's where it went. It didn't go two different places to a CIO and a CAO. But now it will also be being sent out to the coordinating board liaisons. Is that accurate? Okay, so be going another route there. Maybe in that communication indication it also went to CAOs, so they'll know it went some other place.
So it'll be addressed, the memo when it goes out will be addressed again to the chief academic officer, chief instructional officer, and we'll CC the liaison, so everybody will get it, but it will go to all of those places.
Very good. Any other questions for Jeff or the committee or our colleagues from Huron?
Jeff, can you say the title of the survey again?
The official title is the Digital Infrastructure Landscape Survey. Like I said, there was an email that is signed by David Troutman, or at least from David Troutman, that went out yesterday afternoon. So you're gonna look for that. But they are, I guess, I think my liaison probably got it because we have some sort of automated process in place to assure that if it goes to our provost, it's automatically forwarded. So that might be why our liaison got it. But that's just the sort of thing to look out for.
It's very fancy of you, Jeff.
And something else we established was an email address that will now be included in the instructions so that whomever is completing it, if they run into any technical difficulties with it, they can reach out to that email address for guidance. And it is the digital learning email address for the division will be monitored daily. And so people, if they run into snags, can expect that they can find support there.
And most of the people who monitor that email address are sitting in this room, some of them off camera, so we're all aware that we need to.
And of course, Sharon will be helping with that as well in terms of anything on the technical that they may need to address. So, Liz and Holly, just want to say thank you very much, and Sarah on the team also. She had a conflict, so couldn't stick around for the report out, but just want to say what a pleasure it has been for myself and our team to work with the three of you. Y'all have done incredible work, and we look forward to a successful survey administration and seeing the results in the coming months. So thank you.
And thank you for being such wonderful partners as well.
Yes, thank you all.
Or anything else for Jeff or the research committee?
Nope, that's it.
Any questions from the committee? All right. Well, we will move forward then to our next report out. And Liz and Holly, y'all have a great rest of your day and weekend. We'll be talking, I'm sure, soon on Monday with any testing that we've done over the weekend. So we'll be in touch soon and look forward to that administration starting on Tuesday. And so I'm not sure the right order, but maybe since PGP is a prelude to IPDE, we start with our QA committee report out with Janet and Robert.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'll just do a quick update. Janet and I have been working. We've had several meetings. We'd like to thank, thank the coordinating board staff who've helped us, get on the right track in the pre-planning and so on. We'd like to thank all of the members of the committee. They've been very, most of them, and very much so, have been consistently attending all the meetings, or as many as they can, and giving some kind of feedback, even if they can't make every single meeting. So far, we have about 16 proposed changes. We have another meeting coming up on the 28th, and we have a few more, segments to discuss, but so we may have some additional proposed changes. Janet's been doing a great job of keeping track of all the changes and all the proposed wording. So we'll discuss that on the 28th. And Janet, is that when we'll also vote on the subcommittee to get it ready for July?
Yes, that's correct. And we may have to do an extension on that meeting, depending on how long it takes us to work through the voting on those proposed changes. So those of you on the committee or know someone who is, we will probably have to, I'm just thinking in terms of reality here, we may have to have an additional meeting to finish with the voting.
Okay. And the changes are, a lot of them are consistency or just for clarification, to make things a bit clearer, or to make things, more relevant to where we are. There was talks about correspondence course, and if we still needed it, and that's one of the items I believe that we're going to mark to have the discussion on next time. But then there's also wordings like distance learning versus online learning. And, in one area, we're calling them online learning staff or faculty, and then then distance learning faculty. So just to keep that consistency throughout the whole document. But yeah, I think we're coming along really nicely. And, the committee's been working really great. Charlene's on the committee and several of the other folks, Nikki here. I'd like to thank everybody for what they've done. And then Janet, have I left anything out, or?
I don't think so. This has been, I said it in our smaller group, this has been one of the most collaborative, collegial, and contributory, if that's even a word, groups that I've worked with. Everybody is bringing a lot of great discussion and questions and things. We're able to move fairly well through all of the discussions. So
yeah, and they're different perspectives.
Yeah. Yes.
But one of the things I like about the committee overall is, the thought is there that online faculty are just faculty, it's just a different modality. So I think sometimes there's this idea that we're treating online faculty differently, when they're doing everything that a regular faculty on the ground should be doing. And that expectation is carried on, online. But I guess we need to make it very clear that online faculty should be doing the same thing or better. Just the modality is different. But yeah, I like the fact that everybody, and this, I think it's just the whole group, we all see online, the modality of online and I hate to have to say this, some people don't take it as a relevant type of teaching modality, but I think we all are pushing and continue to making it better to where it will continue to be seen as such. So.
Yes. Just so, Robert, we are trying to stay within the, I just wanted to put this out there too, that we are trying to stay within the framework of higher education institutions of all types in Texas, with different types of programs, and some, have more workforce, some don't. Third-party online program management companies that provide that management. All kinds of different contexts, as well as reporting lines and organizational charts and roles and titles and so forth. We are doing our best to keep everything sometimes vague enough to incorporate all that, and sometimes things are too vague and we're like, wait, no, we have to bring that in. So we're trying to keep within the scope of higher ed all the way across, and not just like, oh, well, at my institution this or that. So everybody's being wonderful about that. Are there any questions from the committee?
Right, Patrick, we'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Well, I want to commend your leadership and the contributions of your group members. Y'all are moving forward on this at light speed. When this was revised previously, it took multiple years, not just multiple months. So appreciate the time that I know is going into meeting and in between meetings to move with such speed towards a deadline later this year. So you're to be commended, and thank you all for your time and efforts. I know it's hard and you probably have to move around meetings to make it so that your larger group can meet, and requires flexibility from you and your institutions, all very greatly appreciated. So thank you, good work, and look forward to seeing the results soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll move to our third subcommittee, our operations subcommittee. And Charlene, will you be reporting out for that?
I'm reporting out. I'm in the place of Luke. Luke, okay. He's very, very passionate, so I'm trying to channel his passion. So I've divided this up into two areas. It's the form area, the actual IPD form area, and then we'll talk about the approval of that form. So as far as the form, we had a lot of input, a lot of it from me, I'll be honest, that we have requirements. The form has to be electronic. It has to branch for renewal of IPD, branch for if someone is creating a new one. It has to branch for SACs versus non-SACs as think about you're going through this review laserfish type form process. It has to be designed with PGP in mind, meaning that the PGP mapping that the previous subcommittee just talked about, let it be embedded in the form so that you don't have to go somewhere else. Put everything in one place as they're going through filling out this IPDE form. There should be an institutional toolkit, a website, videos to support the process of how do you fill it out. There should be a timeline of expectation. Communication is paramount. We want to market this when it first comes out. We're bad at marketing, we really are. We have to do better. So it's marketed, make it a big deal, make it a blast as we send out how this new change is going to occur. And then the other thing about the form is when we're submitting it to the institutions, I know that there are times that from the coordinating board, it'll be okay, you have one person at the institution who submits the form. We got that. But there should also be a freedom that the institution can pick several people to be the ones posting some of the information. And also when you're posting information and you're a SACS school, that the language of how you just finished that SACS accreditation, use that same language in having us post information for this. And if it's another accrediting body, this is a simple branching of trying to use that same language in the requirements. So that's kind of the form part of it. Now let's go to the approval process part of it. With the approval process, it could be creating volunteer groups who would, someone who would be an occasional reviewer. There could be you could be an IPDE reviewer, go through a whole process. In this process, you would go through this certification where you will learn the norms and, get that information where you could be a part of the process. And then again, we did say occasional, so that you would be a part of, someone we could call up, hey, are you available? You've gone through the certification. so that you could be one of their reviewers. The other process is, it was, if it's not broken, why we don't fix something that's not broken. So we are all familiar with the doctoral process as far as reviews, and we know that ended in May, but taking some of that same structure of how, the one thing with the doctoral process, and Andrew shared this with us, is there was, as LTAC as a whole, we didn't see the back and forth between the institution and LTAC, but there was a lot of back and forth for those institutions that may have needed a little bit more help of getting their doctoral paperwork together. So we would do that same thing with the IPED type thing, having lots of templates in place where if someone is perfect, you're done. If there's some changes that they need to be done, hey, here's your checklist. If there's a little bit more work, then that's going to be a different process. But we're designing this with the end in mind, thinking of what we need to put in place to make it a self-contained type of a process. Some of the other things, one of the last things is set up the subcommittee to complete all the work that I just talked about, very similar to PGP, where we're going to ask you for some of you to volunteer so that we can work outside of LTAC and get this done, because it needs to be in place by December, right? So now we need to put the work in place to work through what this, the mechanics of what this would look like. That's all I have. My committee members, if I left out anything, please jump in, chime in to add anything. That's it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sounds like a great plan. Thank you that was good enthusiasm standing in for the crowd. And thank you to your committee as well. And so that brings us to our second to last agenda item, which is our discussion of future agenda items and meeting dates. But before we talk about those, there is, I wanted to call out Bella Rodriguez, our UT Austin. She takes a drink just as I'm calling on her. Sorry about that. Really poor timing on my part. But I just noticed you've been incredibly attentive throughout. You weren't in my committee, but I'm sure that you were contributed to the one that you were in. But just be interested to know what, as you've observed and participated in these meetings, what your thoughts are about the work of this group and the way that we come together and collaborate and the things that we deal with. If you wouldn't mind just talking about that briefly for us.
Yeah, thanks. In complete honesty, I do a lot of listening and observing because I bet it's not a shock. I don't know a bunch of terms. So I just kind of sit and observe, and I think that was definitely a reason of why I wanted to be part of this board, was just to know. I go to school, I go to a large public school, and so who are the people making these decisions and what goes in behind it? And it's been really awesome and unique to just see how much passion and how much intention each of y'all have behind all the things that y'all are doing. So I take away a lot of encouragement from all the meetings because everyone is super passionate. I wouldn't say I'm the best contributor in a way, because I am definitely on the lower level of understanding everything. So I do a lot of listening, but it's super awesome. And I'm just really glad that I have this opportunity. But yeah, so definitely always leaving these meetings encouraged, and just knowing that there's all of y'all that, care so much, that make the school that I go to and so many other schools in Texas actually run. And it's all this work that you do on these subcommittees that really make a difference. So.
Fantastic. Very well said. Very much appreciated, I'm sure, by all of the staff and committee members here. And, don't hesitate if there's something that you have a question about to ask it during the meetings, and to our committees and committee chairs, subcommittee chairs. If you want a student perspective, I'm sure Bella would be happy to contribute and answer your questions to inform your discussions as well. So we're very honored to have you with us. We know it's you've got a busy day as it is to come and be with us in these meetings for 4 hours or so is greatly appreciated. And we're thrilled that you're here with us and taking something away from the experience as well. I'm curious, what are you studying at UT Austin, and where are you in your degree?
Yeah, so I will be a junior in the fall, and I'm studying special education. So I'll do that profession for a little bit after I graduate. That's the goal.
Very good. I saw from our roster that you're with us through the 24 cycle, so you'll be with us for another few meetings, and you'll be at UT and as your senior year approaches. And so congratulations on heading towards that milestone, and best of success as you move forward with this academic year. So again, thank you. Yeah, you bet. You bet. And sorry, that was a little impromptu there, not on the agenda, but very much appreciate your interactions with us. So now to the penultimate agenda item, the future agenda items and meeting dates. Typically, our next meeting date would be in October. Does that sound right?
No, usually late August. Go ahead.
We have, well, so end of August is the end of terms for those who are rolling off in 23. And then September 1st, we'll have new members rolling on. So generally, I think we usually try to do it like at end of August, right? So that we have one more meeting with you all, because we can't let you go. So those of you who are rolling. And then the new members roll on for the next meeting. They're going to be that list of potential new members will go to the board at the July meeting, third week in July, to be approved. And then we'll have the sort of final list of who's going to be joining us after starting September 1st. Luke Dowden, who is very, even though he's not here, we've mentioned him a lot. He's very influential here. He did make the suggestion as the chair of the operations committee that we try to set out a year's worth of meetings once we have the new members roll on, so that we're not doing it sort of quarter by quarter, and then we can plan around things like accreditation and QM and all the things that happen. So we may try to do that, but we'll attempt at least to have one more meeting with this crew before the new members roll on.
Okay. And that will be a doodle poll.
Yes.
For a late August meeting.
Yes, so we'll do a doodle poll for late August, trying to work around beginning of semester and all the good things that happen then.
And was there any discussion in the operations subcommittee about a return to full face-to-face participation versus remaining?
The IPDE is so important that we did not have an opportunity to discuss anything else.
We only had an hour.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to put y'all on the spot with any pressure there, but I know some have expressed an interest in coming back together, but I also know that we are able to have more people participate because they don't have to travel. So there are pros and cons on both sides, and of course want to do what's best to encourage the greatest amount of people to participate fully. So we can pick that up. Maybe that could be on our August agenda as one of the items. Or, yeah.
That's right. I think it's safe to say that the August meeting will be like this, and then we have at the coordinating board now moved offices and more or less settled in. You can't see all the cords and things that are around us, but more or less settled in. So we can sort of revisit that conversation maybe at the next quarter's meeting.
Sounds great. So other agenda items.
Could I have a question? Last year y'all said there were a ton of nominations for LTAC. What's it looking like this year?
There were a ton of nominations for LTAC. Sorry, I don't have the exact number, but there were many more nominations than we had spots. However, we did have more spots come open this year. I think we had about 10 in total that were open. So about 10 people rolling off, and we'll get 10 new / a few people were renominated. So that's a possibility.
Great, cool. It's good to see that there's that kind of interest. I think that bodes well for, especially for the new IPDE process, and because I know we had talked about trying to include more of those folks, so there would be an opportunity for them to participate outside of LTAC itself. So it's good to hear that interest remains high.
Absolutely.
Everyone wants to be you. Just so you know.
You specifically, Jeff.
Well, I don't know. They may want to hold off on that, but in general, okay.
Then totally lost where I am. Future agenda items, I think we would want to have John back, of course, for legislative updates. Of course, our typical other coordinating board updates. I don't know that we would need to revisit the Texas Administrative Code changes for program approval or DE unless there's something specific that comes up. We'll have our subcommittee work, of course. We will not have, as we heard, any doctoral proposals to be considered. That era of our lives on LTAC is a memory. Anything else for the agenda that we can think of to add? And our subcommittees are really carrying a lot of weight forward right now that should be the focus of what we do when we come together as well. But any other agenda items from staff or from committee? We can come up with others in between now and then, of course, but want to capture most of them here before we adjourn.
I think, and Janet and Robert, you can wave at me frantically if I'm saying something that's not within the timeline, but I think we're probably going to bring a draft PGP at least to the next meeting for the entire LTAC to take a look at. So that is the tentative plan.
Let's add that to the agenda as an item then, at least tentatively now, and as we approach the time when we circulate it for making it official in public, we can make sure you're at that point, but make it a separate item from just the subcommittee discussion and work that we can focus our full committee time on it as well. Any other items? Okay, and still a doodle poll, but for late August at this point. So are there any particular conflicts that you're aware of in late August? I know it is the beginning of school for many institutions, but there's always something beginning or ending at an institution. It's probably not a big conflict, I would imagine, for conferences, because those usually avoid those border times at beginning and ends of semesters. So, okay, nothing that jumps out at us. So that's all that we have for that agenda item. And the last item is a motion to adjourn that I would entertain from someone. But before I do, just want to say thank you to all of you guys. As Robert and Janet said, the collaborative spirit and the interest in contributing and really putting the time in of all of you is just to be applauded. It's tremendous. And it's really a thrill to work with each and every one of you. So thank you so much. And now I would pause for that motion to adjourn.
This is Janet, motion to adjourn.
Yay, Janet. We have a motion to adjourn. Second. All right, Glynis, multiple, but I saw Glynis first. And all in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. We stand adjourned. Be safe out there. Stay cool wherever you are. We're in for a hot summer, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.